and welcome to Teacher Therapy. Today we have an awesome guest named Miss A, and she really wanted to come on today to warn new teachers about some of the crazy things they might experience in the classroom. Miss A decided to quit teaching after 2 years because some of the just insanity of the system got to be a little too much, and I cannot wait to hear all about her experiences today. So, Miss A, I would just love to know, what did you find to be one of your biggest struggles as a teacher?
So I can say one of my biggest struggles as an educator. So I was completely new to the field. So I did not go to college to be a teacher. So I didn't take any of the teaching courses. My degree is in English. And when I got to this school, I can say that I loved my students. My students were never an issue. I loved teaching. I loved seeing their progress. I loved everything about that aspect. But my biggest struggle came in when I was being judged and harassed by my colleagues and the administration at the school. So it was pretty much just taking that judgment and that harassment from people who didn't really take the time out to sit down and get to know me or acknowledge the work that I was putting in with my students and helping their test scores and their data and everything rise. It was just pretty much they were going off of, oh, I'm too young. They thought I was inexperienced, but they weren't doing anything like coming into my classroom and mentoring me. The whole 2 years I was there, I never had a mentor. So I can say that was my biggest struggle. I did not have that support from veteran teachers or the administration.
Wow, that sounds really rough. And I hear that as such a common factor with teachers feeling like they don't have administrative support, and sometimes they don't even have their coworkers support. So I am curious, what are some examples of ways that maybe you tried to reach out to admin and they just kind of shut you down or ignored you? How did that happen?
Yes. So when I first began, so I was in the English department. I was a ELA teacher, English language arts. And when I first began, I did have a mentor for the first 3 weeks. And my mentor, during those 3 weeks, like during our common planning meetings, and that's pretty much just where the whole English department will meet for a class period, and we'll go over lesson plans and any other important topics to discuss within the English department. And during those meetings, she would cut me off while I'm talking, tell me I don't have anything important to contribute, so I might as well just be quiet. The things that I would wear, like Tory Burch sandals, she would tell me that's not professional. And then I have a quiet and calm demeanor. I'm very soft spoken. So most of the time, I will not volunteer any of my personal business, nor will I talk unless I have something valuable to add to the conversation. So because that I did not share my personal business, things that happen outside of school, and I chose to only talk about school or work with them, she claimed that I had a mental health issue because I did not divulge into my personal life with the rest of the English department. And when I brought this up to my assistant principal, and he was the only person, he was the one who hired me. Because I remember him telling me, he said, I can see that you have such a passion to teach. And he said, passion cannot be taught. But since you don't have an education background, all the things that you need to know about being a teacher, I can help you with, I can teach you that. But the passion that you have to teach, he said, it's so fresh, it's so young, it's so lively. He said that cannot be taught. So when I brought up these issues to him, he suggested that I go speak with the principal and he'll sit in on the meeting. But the thing is, before that meeting happened, one of my coworkers who I had shared this information with, and I was going to go speak with the principal about it, he told me, we're not going to get very far because the principal and the English department chair, which was my mentor at the time, they're first cousins. So he said, I mean, you can have the conversation with the principal, but you won't get very far in the conversation. So pretty much when I had the conversation with the principal, it was very dismissive. And it was like she didn't take the time out to hear where I was coming from or my side of the story. I was in there for probably all of 10 minutes. And then when I reached back out to her after the meeting, just thanking her for listening to me and taking that time out for the meeting, she never responded back to me. I never heard anything else about it. So there were more instances that same fall semester with other colleagues. And there was another colleague, and me and her shared a lot of the same students. And she was I believe, a civics teacher. So my students that she had told all of them that because I was young, that I was dumb, and that they were not going to pass their end of the year exam, and they were going to be retained because I did not know what I was doing. And she said that she feels bad for those students that have me as their teacher. So I immediately reached out to her because, it created doubt and confusion in my students towards me, because they were coming to me in every class period and they were like, do you have the qualifications to teach? Do you have the credentials? Do you know what you're doing? And they're getting all of this from another teacher who she never spoke to me any other time. And she was also a veteran teacher. So I reached out to her and I told her how much her comments hurt me. And I said, as a veteran teacher, if there's something that you believe that I'm not doing right, please come and help me. Please come and share your knowledge with me so I can learn. I'm very flexible. And I take very well to being micromanaged. So, if there's something that I need to know, please come and tell me so that I can make that change. So I went to go have that conversation with her, and pretty much it was also very dismissive. I told the assistant principal about this as well. And also the principal. Again, nothing was done. So at this point, it was getting to the point where every day I was either on my lunch break or leaving work, just calling my mom crying. Because during my lunch breaks, there were all the teachers had told each other not to sit and eat lunch with me. So I would just sit in my classroom and call my mom. And it got to the point my mom said, well, no, the administration there isn't doing anything. We have to reach out to the superintendent. So I emailed the superintendent about everything that was going on. And he never responded to me. Instead, the assistant superintendent, she reached out to me the next day via phone call, and she told me verbatim, she said, the principal is my friend, and you're not experiencing harassment or bullying or a toxic workplace environment. You're just young and you need to do your job.
Wow. That is really intense. And I just want to say I can relate with so much of what you said because I'm also kind of like an introvert, a little bit shy. And I also wasn't the type to just be hanging out and going to happy hour after work with everyone. So it's tough, I think, with some of the cliques and some of the girl groups as teachers because you kind of almost feel pressured to be like BFFs with everybody. But sometimes that's just not your personality. So I can definitely relate to that struggle. And I think the kind of nepotism thing and like the secret friendships and alliances, so many of us teachers have seen that operate. I personally, in the dark ages, back when I was in the classroom, I was actually kind of thinking about becoming an instructional coach, but it turned out that one of basically the principal's best friends was already slated to get the job. So I did the interview and I did amazing. And they even said to me in the interview, wow, you have given the best answers we have ever heard ever. And this happened to me two separate times in the same district. And then it dawned on me like, oh, okay, this is all about friends and cousins and people that know each other. Another school I worked at, there was literally a huge like fraternity sorority group where they knew each other from college and had all these connections. So I just think that that is probably something a lot of new teachers may not anticipate, that they could walk into a web that there's all of these entanglements and they just like don't know what's what. So that is really tough. And I'm kind of curious, what were the students like at your school? Was behavior like managed and under control? Were the students defiant? How did all of that look at the school that you were teaching at?
Okay, so the school that I was teaching at, it was a Title I school, and it's a school, it's the poorest zip code in Florida.
Mm.
So that's where the school is at. So a lot of the students that I taught and the students that went to the school, they were battling things outside of the school, like homelessness, seeing crime right in front of them. It was just so many things, and they would bring that to school, like just heavy on their hearts, heavy on their minds. So they would come to school and they would model the behavior that they see being acted out in front of them outside of the school. So there were a lot of disciplinary issues. There was a lot of defiance from the students. And then, I mean, the school has been around for decades. So, like many people that you ask, they'll tell you this school, there's always been a fight every single day on this campus. And that it's someone that was about 60 years old, and he said it was like that when he was there. Um, so pretty much the school has a reputation. Everyone knows what it is. The way that those issues were handled, it was not the same all across the board. So I mean, for example, they told me, well, the administration, the dean specifically, she had told me that I was writing too many referrals for the students fighting and being defiant. And I need to stop writing so many referrals and stop submitting referrals because I was bringing the school grade down and affecting the school's image. So I had pretty much asked her, I said, well, what am I supposed to do? Because I need to get these things documented. And I mean, that's what I was told to do, is to write the referrals, get them in the system, get these instances documented. And pretty much she had just kind of, again, brushed me off. And my referrals that I kept submitting for fights and defiance, disrespect, she was kicking them back to me. So meaning she was just canceling them out of the system and returning them to me. But the students, I mean, I feel like that I established an excellent relationship with my students. I mean, as far as the issues of them being defiant towards me, like as they were with other teachers, I didn't really have many of those issues. I only had issues like if I witnessed a fight outside of my classroom, or if there was a fight inside of my classroom. Those were the only issues I had. But as far as like students being disrespectful to me, I never really had those issues. Me and my students, we were on the type of level. I was giving them so much patience and respect and kindness that they loved coming to my class. They loved waking up to come to school. And that was something that a lot of the veteran teachers there, they hadn't even seen before from those students. Because I had one teacher, and she's passed away now, but she was a veteran teacher, and she pulled me to the side. She was my next door neighbor in the classrooms. She pulled me to the side and she said, these students, the way that they gravitate towards you, the way that you make them so eager to come into the classroom and learn, and they're just happy to be here. She said, I've never seen that before. And she said, I've been teaching here for about 30 years. And she said, these students, they can be rough, and they run new teachers off. And but she said, you sat down, you built that relationship with those students. And she said, it's something that I've never seen before. So I have to commend you for that. And I'll always remember that.
Wow. So it sounds like maybe the students did have behavior problems throughout the building and issues with fighting and defiance, but in your own room, you were able to establish relationships and have control over the classroom. And so I'm curious, did the school have a discipline program in place where, like, maybe PBIS or maybe in-school suspensions, or how did that all operate in your school?
Yes. So there was in school suspension and also out of school suspension. But like I said, how the administration handled the disciplinary issues and behavioral problems, it was never the same. So no two cases were the same. So you can have one student who got into maybe 5 fights in the span of 3 months. okay, so that student, they're already supposed to be expelled or on the expulsion list because they're a risk. But you'll have one student who got into a fight, like I said, about 5 times within 3 months, and the administration won't do anything about it. And then you'll have a student, this will be their first fight, the administration will immediately have them expelled. So I never saw many cases at all where the disciplinary problems were handled the same. So that also created confusion in me because I'm like, how are the behavioral issues addressed? How are they handled? What are the guidelines supposed to be? Because how can one student have all of these things stacked up against them and they're still here causing all of these disruptions, and the other student, they were on their first strike and they're immediately out. So it also confused me, and like when I would question it, I believe I questioned it one time to the assistant principal, and he said he also was not too sure because that was his very first year at the school as well when I first began.
Definitely. I think a lot of teachers can relate to even that story too, that there's just a lot of inconsistency. And I noticed too when I was a teacher that some kids were kind of the office favorites, even if they were some of the naughtiest behaved students. So sometimes we would send a kid down and he was an office favorite and he'd come back literally with a cupcake and a t-shirt after like terrorizing the school. Other kids kind of had immunity because their parents would raise heck and like come after the school so they could do no wrong. And then the one time I worked at like a rich, fancy private school, it was really based on which parents had money and power in the community, or which kids actually were relatives or actual children of teacher and staff, you know. So I can definitely relate, and I think a lot of people can, to seeing that, wow, even with kids, there's favoritism and there's untouchables. And that definitely, it's something that kids figure out pretty quickly. They're like, oh, okay, so I can act crazy and get away with it. And that makes it much harder for the teachers. And so I'm curious, are there any kind of experiences or stories that you could tell new teachers to kind of illustrate what a day in the life of a new teacher might be like?
So I believe that my experience is a little different, and I do hope that other new teachers have better experiences than me. My experience, well, the day in the life of a new teacher, pretty much, I would, get to work, get through all of my class periods. And then during common planning meetings with the whole English department, the times that it was, lesson planning where everyone collaborating together, I was often left out. And instead of me being able to give my input or opinion on what lessons we should do next, or just even like the highs and lows of the week, what went well in the lesson, what went wrong in the lesson, how can we change this so these students are hitting their standards. I was hardly allowed to give input in those conversations. So I believe as a new teacher, that's what I would have wanted, to be included in those conversations, to have my voice heard and have my opinions taken into account on how to revitalize lessons, how to teach this going forward, what to, maybe we don't have to teach the next or the following year. But other than that, that was just pretty much how my days went. It was just pretty much like I would get told everything of what to do, and I couldn't disagree with that. I couldn't go like fight that and say, okay, well, I don't believe that that's beneficial to the students that we're teaching. Because a lot of the lessons that we came up with together, or they that came up with, my first year there, I'm sorry, I'm going off. But my first year there, I was teaching general English language arts, and I had 3 advanced classes of English language arts. So pretty much how the 2 levels worked at the school was general was below grade level, advanced was right on grade level. So that's how they separated those. So I'm pretty much telling them, a lot of my students, they came in on about a kindergarten through third grade reading level. So I'm telling them, what works for your students, if you're teaching all advanced classes, it's not going to work for my students. I'm still teaching my students the basics. I have to make sure their foundation is solid before I can build on any middle school English language art lessons. And I would also get reprimanded for that, because they're saying, like, why are you teaching them how to write a coherent sentence and they're supposed to be writing a full essay? And I'm telling them, if they can't write 2 or 3 sentences that are coherent, that have the proper punctuation, they cannot write a full essay. So I have to teach them those basics first before I can move on to that lesson.
Wow. And so I'm kind of curious, did you end up feeling like you were just being gaslighted as a teacher with all the things that were happening with admin and with student discipline and with trying to do lesson planning?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely felt like I was being gaslighted. And especially, like I said, when I had those conversations, or that one conversation with the assistant superintendent, and she was pretty much just like, the principal is my friend. You don't know what you're talking about. Even though I had experienced those things firsthand. And there were multiple times that my mom had experienced also, because she would be on the phone while something is happening, or while someone is saying something to me in passing, something negative. Um, and there was also a lot of gaslighting, I would say, from even the administration, the colleagues, the mentor that I had the first 3 weeks, the assistant principal, who pretty much, he was the only person, and about 2 or 3 other teachers. I got support from them there, but the assistant principal removed my mentor. But even when he was telling her that she was being removed as my mentor and why, she was just saying, like, I never did anything to you. I've only tried to help you. You need to get thicker skin if you want to work here, and just things like that. So I absolutely believe I was gaslighted a lot.
Wow. And so I'm kind of wondering too, in that environment without any support, it sounded like some of your coworkers were undermining you to your students. And on top of that, it sounds like you weren't able to really contribute when you were doing lesson plannings and unit plannings. How did that end up translating to your students' performance? Did you feel like they were getting their work in, that they were trying their best, that they were succeeding? Or did you kind of feel like the system slowed you down from what you would have been able to accomplish?
No, ma'am. So my students, even though I was taking a lot of, I could say, hate, harassment, and just overall negative things from my colleagues, I never let it show in front of my students. I was always there with a smile on my face. I always showed up and gave 110% every single day, despite whatever I was dealing with from my colleagues or administration. So when it came time for the end of the year state test, all of my classes, I actually had the second highest test scores of the entire department, for English language arts. And many, if not all, of my students were promoted to advanced language arts for the next year, just for their performance in my class and also on the state exam at the end of the year.
Wow, that is really impressive. And I'm kind of wondering, just with all of the factors that came together, did you end up finding teaching fulfilling and joyful? Or did you feel like some of the issues with just other adults and staff members kind of hampered some of that joy?
I can say it did have a hindrance on, how joyful I could have found it, but I still, I love teaching. And I mean, that experience, or those experiences that I went through, it never took away my joy or my passion for teaching. After I left from the school, I started a tutoring company. And on average, I tutor I can say about 11 students per semester. Right now is the summer, and I have about 10 students that I tutor regularly, just in June and July. And in April, I was already booked for this upcoming school year, just from word of mouth, and also parents, students that had me last semester for tutoring. So it did not take away the joy that I have for teaching or the love that I have for teaching. Like I said, I feel like I could have had a much more effective and happier experience with teaching if I had that support from my colleagues and from the administration. But as far as the students, I love my students, and I actually did, I can say part of me did get up every day happy to go to work. But there was also just always that doubt in the back of my mind, like, what am I going to face today from my colleagues or administration?
Yeah, I think that's one of the worst feelings because a lot of times students are the reason that teachers want to leave, but in some cases, it's really not the students, it's the adults, it's the system, it's the cattiness, it's the drama. And I've had years that were both ways. Some years I'm like, all these kids are gonna like, make me gray before 35. And then other years, it literally like the kids were fine that year and it was literally the coworkers. So I kind of tell new teachers that sometimes it's like spinning the doom wheel of fortune. You just never know what it's going to be. Is it going to be a crazy admin? Is it going to be the co-teacher from the underworld? Is it going to be the nightmare students? Is it going to be nightmare parents? There's just so many factors that make teaching such a hard job. And so I'm just kind of curious, is there anything that you would have done differently with hindsight being 2020 and kind of looking back? Is there anything you wish you would have kind of approached differently in light of kind of the weird circumstance that you were in?
Well, I can say that in hindsight, and I know my family will agree with me on this because they were heavily, pushing me to. But as much as I loved my students, in hindsight, I should have left. Just from the treatment that I was getting from my colleagues in administration. After I left, I was in therapy for about 9 months. And my therapist has said, the stuff that you were going through as a 22-year-old, she's like, it was heavy. And she could tell that I had PTSD from all of those instances at the school. And she even asked me herself, everyone asked me, why did you not leave? Why did you not leave? Because I would have left if I was going through all of that you were going through on a daily basis. And my only answer for everyone is my students, they needed me. And I couldn't bring myself to leave those students that needed me. Because when I went to school, I was more than just a teacher. I was mom, aunt, nurse, therapist, teacher. I mean, I was anything that my students needed that day. And a lot of students, they would even tell me, oh, I wish you were my mom, or can you teach us all of the years throughout middle school? Like, you make learning fun. You make me want to show up. You make me want to be here. And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to teaching, because if your students, if they want to be there, then the work, it'll reflect. The work that they do, it'll reflect. They're going to apply themselves more because they want to make you proud. They want to be there. They want to make everyone around them proud. So they're going to apply themselves more. They're going to put more effort towards their assignments, towards their tests. But looking back on it, I'm like, I should have just put in to transfer somewhere else, and maybe I wouldn't have had that horrible experience that kind of put a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth for teaching. But other than that, I don't think there's anything that I would have done differently other than that.
I totally understand. I've had a lot of people ask me that about my nightmare year of teaching, which was my third year at the private school. And so many people have been like, why didn't you sue them? Why didn't you quit? But I think sometimes like it's easy to feel trapped in a situation like that too. And there's just so much pressure. So I totally understand how that could happen. And I'm just kind of curious, what do you wish other people knew or understood about the teaching profession?
Okay, so I would say that new teachers, make sure that you have a mentor. Make sure that your mentor is supportive, that they listen to you and they respect you, or y'all respect each other. That's the most important thing that I wish that I had. And I feel like if I had that, my 2 years would have gone a lot smoother. And I can also say if something does not feel right to you, you just leave. That's the most important thing. If something does not feel right, just leave. And because it could come back to where you're in a situation, where you're being scapegoated or railroaded. So if something is not right, something is off to you, just leave. That's my most important advice.
Thanks for sharing that. And I'm also kind of curious. I love to ask people if there was anything that you could change in education with a magic wand, what would it be?
That's a tough one. I would say, I guess, how teachers are vetted. I would say that because there's like kind of touching on the nepotism aspect of things. And then also just with a lot of veteran teachers that they're only there because they've been there for so long. And they're not really changing with the times of where education is going, and how it's getting modernized. They're still in more of an old fashioned or traditional way of teaching. So I would say that I would change. I would also change. I feel like that employees from the school board, I feel like they should be making more regular trips inside of schools and sitting inside of more classrooms. Because like some of the policies that get passed or even the curriculum, I feel like it's just more important. And some of them are retired teachers, but just coming into a current classroom and sitting in it maybe once bi-weekly, just seeing how things are going and what policies should be put in place, how the curriculum needs to change, what standards probably need to change. So that's something I would change with education, more so on the policy side.
Well, thank you, Miss A. This has been a really awesome discussion. And I think it just paints a realistic picture for people that are new to the profession to just be aware so it's not shocking. They can kind of know what to look out for. Because, like we mentioned earlier, sometimes it's students, sometimes it's admin, and sometimes it's coworkers. And all of those are equally different circumstances. So I appreciate you sharing your story with us. And audience, thank you so much for watching. If you want to interview with me, you can email me at teachertherapytrish@gmail.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye for now, everybody.